Hello. North Korea says it is ready to teach the US a severe lesson with nuclear strategic force if it takes military action over its nuclear weapons program. The state news agency says the international community is infringing North Korea's sovereignty. The UN's unanimous vote on sanctions follows repeated missile tests by Pyongyang, which have escalated tensions across East Asia. Yugita Lemay reports from the South Korean capital, Seoul. Should just warn you, there is flash photography in her report.
We denounce and totally reject the UN Security Council resolution on our country, which the US and hostile forces have fabricated, says a presenter on North Korea's official news agency, relaying the country's defiant response to fresh sanctions against it. It's not what these two men would have liked to hear. The US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Manila. Both countries voted in the new resolution against North Korea. China says that even with sanctions, it wants a diplomatic solution to the problem. But the US says it's only open to dialogue with Pyongyang on one condition.
The best signal that North Korea could give us that they're prepared to talk would be to stop these missile launches.
At the gathering of Southeast Asian nations in the Philippines, Secretary Tillerson is on a mission to get more countries to isolate North Korea. Sanctions have not worked in the past, though, and with Pyongyang's fierce response, they're unlikely to work now.
We need to be creating conditions where they are ready to come back to the table. And you're not going to create those conditions with unrelenting sanctions, with threats of war, of preventive war, which is what we've heard from the Trump cabinet this last week.
South Korea is open to talks with its neighbor. The country's foreign minister Kang Kyung-wha made that offer again to her North Korean counterpart in Manila. But he's reported to have called Seoul's proposal insincere. This country, South Korea, has dealt with the threat from across the border for a long time. But now that Pyongyang has said it's developed missiles which are capable of hitting the US, it's made America nervous and it's captured more global attention than ever before. The issue overshadowed this meeting in Manila. And even though regional leaders came together to put up a united front, the tension and rhetoric is far from over. Yugita Lemay, BBC News, Seoul.
No, in fact, it's still coming in, but Yugita joins us now from Seoul. Yugita, I just wonder what Seoul makes of this. It's almost a drip, isn't it, of ever increasing threats?
Well, it is, and this country has, to strike a very tricky balance, because on one hand, it's obviously welcomed the UN sanctions, and with the US, it's setting up an anti-missile defense system here. In fact, that was a response to the last missile test, which took place just about 10 days ago. It expedited the setting up of this anti-missile defense system. But on the other hand, it's also extended the offer of talks. So the president made that offer earlier on. The foreign minister, when she visited Manila, said she was open to talks with her North Korean counterpart. The foreign ministry here has actually told us that she did run into her North Korean counterpart at a dinner briefly. But during that meeting, the North Korean foreign minister said that, the offer of talks was insincere. And we've actually heard him talk now as well. He's made his remarks at the ASEAN Regional Forum and once again sent out a very strong message to the US, defended the missile program, saying that the country needs intercontinental ballistic missiles to strike the heart of the US as defense against invasion. He's also said that the UN Security Council abused its authority when it's passed those sanctions.
OK, Yugita, thank you very much indeed. Bring us up to date there. With me here in the studio is Paul French, who's an analyst with a special interest in North Korea and is author of North Korea, State of Paranoia. Paul, the title of your book seems more pertinent every time you come in to talk to us, but obviously paranoia can have results as well. And I just wonder what you make of these yet more inflammatory remarks coming out of Pyongyang right now.
Well, I mean, this is standard rhetoric that we've listened to for years now. But I actually think we might be at quite a very interesting moment. The fact that the North rejected the talks with the South sounds bad on one level, but these sanctions with China and Russia on board also mean that China is going to push for the six-party talks. And I think that North Korea might be holding out for those six-party talks where they get to sit down with the Japanese, the Americans, the Russians, the Chinese and the South. And everyone can stand down a little bit.
Because the Chinese seem to be pulling back from the negativity of that North Korean rejection, didn't they?
Yes, and one hopes that China is going to be very serious about trying to push these six-party talks, we hope. And also what China is suggesting is, if the North could just stand down their missile tests for a little bit, and America and South Korea could stand down their military exercises off the coast of Korea, perhaps there's a moment here where everybody could just stand down a little bit, get around a table somewhere in Beijing and talk.
But we've just had further sanctions agreed, and Beijing basically put its weight behind them as well, while on the other hand saying this is not the way to go. So, I mean, very confused messages as well for Pyongyang.
Yes, I think what China is talking about is what they call precision sanctions, and we don't quite know what that means, and we've never really known what sanctions mean anyway. They're such a movable feast. But, I mean, North Korea, I think, must take a message from that UN resolution, with China, not using its veto, Russia not using its veto, and then China following up afterwards, not just walking away from that meeting and saying nothing, but continuing to talk about how they can apply precision sanctions, how we could get the six-party talks restarted. Now everyone just needs to calm down a little bit.
Why is it, for all that, there are still missile tests taking place. We can expect one any day at any point, of course. Why would that be? Why is that button still being pressed?
Well, I think that Kim Jong-un, as a legacy, sees himself delivering that nuclear weapon. He wants to get to that point, and they're going to keep testing it. And if he gets to six-party talks, and if those six-party talks do grant some concessions to him in some way to move forward, then once again, North Korea's nuclear bluff will have worked. Right?
Well, I mean, because what's fascinating to many of us and to you as well, of course, is it's not a transparent world, is it? It's desperately oblique. So actually knowing what the next step from Pyongyang might be is extremely difficult for any party to work out, and even Beijing.
Yes, and I think that we get to a stage where we can confirm that they have an ICBM, then the ship has sailed. We're no longer trying to prevent the North from being nuclear. They're a nuclear power, and we'll have to live with it. The question then is, what happens then? Do we talk about rebuilding that economy, making them feel more secure, or does Kim Jong-un go on and want more toys and make more threats?
Another big decision to be taken if and when. Well, Paul, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. You're watching Impact. Stay with us here on BBC World News.